Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Educator Experience podcast. My name is Sally Carter, and this is a space where I sit down with educators from across the world to learn about their teaching journeys and a little bit about them and transformational moments, all of that interesting stuff. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down with Patty McGee, who is a nationally recognized literacy consultant. She's a speaker and educator and has a huge passion for transforming classrooms into spaces where language and learning come alive. With decades of experience as a teacher, coach, and advocate for delightful literacy practices, Patty has worked alongside educators across the country, partnering to unlock the full potential of their students through innovative and practical teaching strategies. Now, I'm really excited to feature her newest book. She's got three. Her recent one is Not Your Granny's Grammar, and you can connect with her with all of our links about that too. In today's conversation, we touch on a few different topics. We talk about the value of mentorship in teaching and what it's like to have those types of connections as we grow as educators and people to have her back essentially. We talk about her writing process now that she's a three-time published author. She has a lot of experience and advice to give for other educators who may be entering that space. I'm just absolutely enamored with the idea of being a traveling teacher. I think it's so interesting. And we get into what her life is like and how she got there. So, a really great and fun conversation. Patty, I don't know if we talk about it in the actual episode, but Patty is in New Jersey. I don't know if I've ever been to New Jersey, or maybe I've just driven through on my adventures through the United States. So, without further ado, let's get to it with my conversation with Patty McGee. Being an educator is one heck of a lonely journey, but every step holds a story, an experience that shapes how we teach, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Educator Experience. I'm your host, Sally Carter, and together we'll explore the moments that define us as educators. Through authentic conversations and shared experiences, we're building a community that connects, reflects, and inspires, all while breaking down barriers in education, one story at a time. You are not alone. Let's grow together. Patty, thanks so much for joining us today and welcome to the Educator Experience podcast. I'd love to just start off by asking you a little bit about you and getting to know you and how you got to where you are in education at this point.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am so delighted to be here. So, thinking about my journey as an educator, it's kind of unconventional in many ways. I was a brand new teacher in the mid 90s, and it was a very hard time to find a job, as a matter of fact. There were so many teachers in education it was really a big challenge. And I ended up starting eventually at the school that I went to. So it's this tiny little town, and it's right next to me where I am right now in a different tiny little town. And my principal turned out to be my first grade teacher. And so I was teaching with so many other teachers that were my teachers. And it was really interesting. I learned a lot. So you can say I had 2 educations in the same building. Education
Literally,
as
yes.
as a K through 8, and then as a brand new teacher until about 10 years later when I had gotten my library media specialist certification, and I switched schools to the one that my kids went to. So it was very convenient for scheduling and things like that. And I enjoyed being a school librarian. Like, it was just dreamy, picking books and reading books and learning new technology. Because there's so many tiny districts around here, we have 2 high schools that we send to, and there's a curriculum center there. And I started with them and spent, I guess that would be the beginning of my traveling teacher days, where I would go to lots of different schools and work with teachers and students in demo situations or coaching situations, all over this area. And then finally, I ended up being on my own. So I am my own self. I have the wonderful pleasure of traveling the country and working with educators. And I love the description that I overheard a second grader tell her grandpa about me. I was walking out of the school and I could hear her behind me, and she said, "Grandpa, that lady's not a stranger. She's a traveling teacher," which means
So cute. Oh my God.
so cute. I know.
It
And then even
hurts.
cuter was the perfect definition that came after that, where she said, she comes to make teachers' jobs just a little bit easier, and sometimes she teaches us. It was just perfect. Yeah,
Oh,
I wish I had it recorded
oh,
because it sounds even better in a
yes.
second grade voice.
Yes. So tell me more about how you make teachers' jobs easier. What does that look like for you?
So, having as many decades in education as I have, I feel like I've been on a pursuit of finding things that educators can use that are vetted in a way that I've really been thinking about, like, just these 3 words, that they're simple, powerful, and free. I often call it SPF approved, simple, powerful, and free, where they're just simple moves or simple resources that when we cut out a lot of the bling, we're cutting straight to the chase. And we find that it's actually more effective to simplify many of the things that we do as educators. And so Oliver Wendell Holmes said once, "I am looking for the simplicity on the other side of complexity." And that's what I'm in this in search of all the time. And I find them through teachers that I work with, and I try to pollinate those ideas with the other teachers I work with.
That's amazing. That is literally the whole point of why I started the Educator Experience was to bring people together to share their knowledge because being a teacher is such an individual and solo kind of thing that unless you're talking to other people, hearing how they're handling certain situations, you don't know what we don't know, right? And especially for resources. Like, it's not like we go up and it's not like I go home and I look for an easier way to do something because I don't necessarily know that that exists. So
Mhm.
to have someone like you have that bigger understanding of easier ways to do things is so neat for teachers. That's so cool. So what does your typical day look like that I'm so curious to know about this
Mm.
traveling teacher?
So when I am working with schools and districts, most often it looks like I'm working with, say, a group of teachers on a particular grade level. We have a focus, um, anything really in literacy. But my big focus lately has been conversation in the classroom. So that's a lot more holistic and really is just something essential that I'm noticing. It's almost like a feeling of we're teaching and kids are learning when we're talking, and they are for a bit, but conversation is so essential and simple, powerful, and free, especially with certain structures to put in there. So, like, we might focus on something like that and we'll talk it over, give an overview of it, and then often go into the classroom where I demo a few things that we talked about. We come back and debrief. And then ideally, if there's still time, that's always difficult with subs, that we plan something from there. So plan a certain, like, say, talking protocol we want to use, or plan from a particular resource that we already know we want to use, and the times where kids will have conversation. Some tips and pointers about, like, when conversation, how often, what's the proportion that we think is the most beneficial in the classroom. So it's just a lot of collaboration, and there's that demo in there so that it's not just hypothetically imagining what does this look like. But it's knowing visually with students that teachers are familiar with, and then opportunities to do that planning so that it's not like one more thing on top of everything that teachers have going on, which we know is immense.
It's so interesting. You bring up conversation. I weirded out one of my university classes this past semester because there were days I would just not have slides. It would be a non traditional type of teaching day. And we would sit and we would talk as a group. It was hard for students to transition from a normal lecture type of situation to understanding the value in conversation for them in their learning. So I had
Yes.
to talk about that process and the value
Hmm.
in it. So it's an interesting experience for sure. So much value in conversation.
Yes.
What stands out for you in terms of pivotal oh my gosh, good morning. Pivotal or transformational moments in your career?
So, a few pivotal moments for me professionally and personally were moments of delight. Um, so, one example of a delightful moment was when I was in a classroom demoing, and it wasn't my first time there. I'm usually in classrooms that I haven't visited before. And I was going to work with one student to show how conferring can be very quick and effective and using a certain structure, la, la, la. Was going over to this one student and I said, "Did I work with you before?" And she just looked at me. This was second grade, also took out her pencil case and opened it up. And in there was the post it that I had left her with the notes from our conversation the time I was there before. So it's so cute. And it's
So
so
cute.
like validating because,
Yes.
when I'm not in the same place every day, I really lose out on the impact on anyone, teachers, students. So when I see those little footprints of our time together, it's just absolutely delightful for me. And those are transformative moments where it's just underscoring the power of this work. And so that was certainly transformative. I also have to give incredible uh, just props, I guess, to my mentor, Linda Mayer. She was my child development teacher in high school. And then she became my mentor as a new teacher and
Okay.
became my mentor in turn when I joined that curriculum center as a traveling teacher. She just was always invested in my success, rippling into classroom success. And I just, I want to be two things in the education world. I want to be paying it forward the way that Linda Mayer paid it to me. And then my favorite artist, if anybody knows her, is Brandy Carlisle. She That's who I want to be in education. She is brilliant. She is kind. She is so supportive of especially those who have the most challenges in this world of ours. And so those are two things I aspire to be. So I guess in my personal life, with going to see Brandy Carlisle concerts and listening to her book and following her closely, that's been transformative for me because I can see in a profession a person that I want to be. And then Linda Mayer pouring into me so much love and so much learning in my like mid career time.
I think that's so sweet. It's so important, I think, for especially new educators to find that person,
Mm,
even if it isn't automatically just given to you, but to make those contacts early and to try and really connect with people because people do want to help
yeah,
generally, right? And it's
yeah,
really amazing, especially teachers. We want to give. It's not a competition between teachers ever, a support and rise together type of
yes.
thing. So I think that sometimes, especially in higher ed, something that new educators sometimes miss out on are making those connections so that they can feel that level of support. I think it is a little bit more prevalent in K to 12, is it not? When you start, you already have kind of a mentor and some classes with people. Is that correct?
I would say so. And what's interesting is back in the day when I was a brand new teacher, the person who was my mentor was wonderful, but there was something gravitational that pulled him to be more of a mentor for another teacher that started with me, and her mentor had more of a gravitational pull to me.
Little
So I think it's,
switcheroo.
yes, it's, and like together, the four of us, it was just
Yeah.
absolutely wonderful. And also, I feel like there is something kind of kismet about the connection that we make, that we're given a mentor and that mentor is so valuable. And then there's something about just who we're drawn to and who is drawn to us that may be this very same person. And it may be a, something we're lucky enough to have more than one of.
Right, right. Or
Yeah.
even just part pieces, like mentor for certain things, even
Yeah.
if it's not as a whole, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so amazing. What other stories stand out for you in your journey of being a traveling teacher? I'm just
Yes.
in awe of it. It's so exciting.
Oh, goodness. I've got so many. Another one that comes to mind is just when schools were starting to open up again, in terms of the pandemic. I was invited to a school in Kentucky, and we couldn't be in classrooms because there was not enough space and proximity for teachers and me, um, and students to all be in the same place. And so my demos were happening where a brave student would come to the library and would sit near me, you know, but all masked and everything. And the teachers were spread out so that they could see a one on one conversation, what that might look like. And this time it was with a first grader. And when I was demoing, first of all, at that point, I know a lot of teachers felt this way, but I was like, do I still know how to do this? Like,
Like,
haven't
which
been doing
way
this
is up?
face to face then. Yeah. In a really long time. Okay, let's try this out. But I was teaching him basically how he can use a booklet to write rather than just writing from the top to the bottom of the page, which is one of those SPF approved things because it just has so much good stuff that comes out of it, and there's really nothing more you need to do than make a booklet. But that's another story. So I teach him this. He goes back to his classroom and he's like Tigger, like bouncing out
Just
of the library where we
hopping
were.
along. So cute.
And yeah, and then his first grade teacher came to me afterwards and she said that when he got back to the classroom, he said, and I'm doing my best New Jersey to Kentucky accent here, um, there was a lady who came all the way from New Jersey to teach me how to write books. So moments like that as a traveling teacher are just so beautiful. But then there are also moments where somebody takes the time to connect with me, especially in places that I have, traveled a distance to and made connections with me that took effort and shared words that I don't know, were just so validating and beautiful. So many people are coming to my mind right now. And also just found that the humanity in people when things are hard, you know, the work we do is still hard. As a traveling teacher, we're juggling so many things as teachers. So here I am, kind of inserting myself in the day. But I have to think about a very difficult year that I had a couple of years ago where I had a house fire and we were displaced. My husband was laid off and my father passed. And it was just obviously a very difficult time. So I would tell like the school leaders beforehand, just know that I'm like extra tender. Just know it. Still doing my job. We're going to be okay, but just know. And the people they would tell would either be hugging me when they'd be coming in to what we were doing, or there were places because in my father's name, we were asking for donations to a local food pantry. They made donations. They gave me flowers. They just acknowledged the humanity of the pain that I was in. That I couldn't be more grateful for because
That is so
in that
beautiful.
time, it's lonely to be away from my family. But yet there were so many teachers that just loved me up. And I
Mhm.
just can't say enough of how powerful that experience is.
That's really beautiful, isn't it? It's really a testament to teachers supporting one another and coming together for each other. That's beautiful. Patty, you're also an author, aren't you?
Yes,
Yeah. Are you able to share a little bit about that?
sure. So I currently have 3 books out. The first one was about it's called, Feedback That Moves Writers Forward, and it's alternatives to correcting student writing. Because yeah, I found that when I was correcting student writing, I really wasn't getting the outcomes that I was looking for. I was looking for student growth, but what was happening was like student defeat or just a real discomfort in writing because it was so vulnerable knowing that I'd be coming up and fixing things, or I'd take papers and I'd red pen them and I'd give them back. And of course, no one was really looking at the feedback there. And I don't even know if I'd call that feedback now. But if they were, we then almost have the expectations that kids will come up to us and say, okay, so this error here, what can I do with it the next time so that I understand the steps on how to use it properly? I mean, I was a good student and I never did that. I just
Yeah.
looked at the
But as a teacher, we
corrections.
think that, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
And so then it's an enormous amount of time, most of the time on our own time that we're doing that, and it does not have a return on investment that we're hoping. If it did, I would embrace it. But I believe there are many other ways that we can influence student writers, and that's what that first book was. So after I scratched that itch, I then moved on to just some very basic practices of writing instruction. And so that's called the 7 Essentials. The reason I wrote that is because it's really come to my attention over the years, especially as a traveling teacher, that the majority of us were not taught how to teach writing. The majority of us were taught how to teach reading, ideally. But when it came to writing, it was the default approach of assign and assess, assign and assess. And there are solid bodies of research out there that say kids need different things, and they're decades deep. This research, and so that's what my second book was on, methods, basically. And then my third book, which maybe it's because it's my latest book, but I don't know, it's kind of my favorite right now. My little not your granny's grammar.
So I've seen it online. This is so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's again, it was like a problem of practice for me, just like correction was in writing. And I have spent the past 3 decades experimenting and playing with different ways of teaching grammar, and realizing that the traditional way, the way that our granny and their grannies were taught, um, is not effective. I knew that already. I just couldn't envision alternatives to it. And so I met Tim Donahue, who is my co author in this book, and he knows everything there is to know about grammar. I know a lot about grammar, but there's nothing like Tim Donahue's knowledge of grammar. And so his knowledge of grammar my, I don't know, practice and play with instructional practices combined together creates a simple, much more simple, and effective, and a real, as they say, as the young people say, glow up in grammar
Yep, heard that a few times.
instruction.
That's so cool. When did this come out?
This one came out in June, so it's a brand new
Okay, so
baby.
not even a year. That's so
Yeah.
exciting. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So what are your do you wanna keep writing? Do you have ideas just kind of sitting on the back burner? How does that
Mhm.
work for a writer? I have not written a book, so I don't know what a writer's process is. I've interviewed I don't know if it's an interview, but sat down with a bunch of writers for this podcast, and I'm just absolutely, enamored with the process
Mhm.
of it.
Yeah. It's the first time around, I would say it's a lot of extra work where, because on the first book, I didn't already have another book. I had blog posts. That was it. I didn't even have a peer reviewed article. So I was lucky enough to be connected with my editor, who even had a hand in this third book. She came to a keynote that I was giving basically on alternatives to the red pen approach. And she took me under her wing. And I was just so lucky. Wendy Murray, she supported me. I realized how much an editor does for a writer. I mean, I don't know why their names aren't on the cover, like bigger than
With
ours.
everything that they contribute,
Yes,
right? Yes,
yes.
yes.
But once there's a book out there and it's been well received, and this one was, it's a little bit easier to pitch your books. Like, you can say, here's my idea. Should I run with that? Should I work on it? You still do a proposal, and thankfully, I still get uh, feedback on the proposal because I really want to know what I'm not seeing. Because in my own world of, living in whatever the topic is, I'm sure that there's other perspectives I'm not imagining. So we get a review, um, and then it's just like nose to the grindstone. It's just, as Anne Lamott often points out to us in her essay on the first draft. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. Okay, well,
This is
hopefully it's only
cool.
grown-ups listening, because it's called The Shitty First Draft, and it is so good because Anne Lamott, like, is the writer of the world. Like, she's just absolutely so talented, and talks about how difficult that first getting things on the page is. So I highly recommend. It's a very short
Okay,
essay.
we'll link some stuff in this podcast. This is exciting. Thank you.
Sure. And so just getting the words down the first go of it is really not an enjoyable part for me.
What
Like,
a
yeah, there are some people who love that process, and I don't. It
like,
just feels,
skip over.
yeah,
Just to
yes,
get this done, skip.
yep,
Fast forward.
yes, yes. I have found that it's really an exercise in, like, mental strength, like trusting that I'm going to be able to get something on this paper that is going to make sense eventually, but is also going to convey my ideas. And I know that sounds very strange, but I think it's because of the fact that I really have never had and didn't have a writing coach, like somebody to teach me to write. So I'm going into this. Now it's my third book. I realize that, but it's, going into it, especially the first one, was very much like, shining a light in the dark, trying to find the things I needed as I was going. But once I have the first draft down and I leave out the first chapter, and then I come back to the first chapter after I've revised the rest of the book, that part of the process I didn't figure out
Mm.
until this third book. But it is, once it's down, I love the revision process. I love the
Okay.
revision process. I love writing the first chapter. That one, in my latest book, I went so much more quickly, and naturally when I used that kind of process.
It's nice to feel it all come together, I
Yeah.
bet, for sure. I was just watching this is kind of a little funny thing, but, I spent my New Year's Eve watching, an electronic music concert put on by Fred again in, Dublin, and I was cleaning my toilets to this electronic
Oh,
music, cleaning my house on New Year's. Um, but and it prompted me I was really, really impressed by his work and his concert. So I watched some YouTube videos and interviews with him, and he is just an incredible musician. And just to see how his brain works, and he said very similar thing in that you need to fall in love with the process, right? It's it's not I mean that you're trying to get to the end result, but it's the process, right? And that's something I talk to my students about as well, is especially in writing, is being comfortable being uncomfortable in the process and being okay with that state as well, I think. And I can only imagine what it's like for a professional writer. Yeah.
well, the
Being
best
comfortable being
part about
uncomfortable.
yes. And honestly, the best part about being a professional writer is that I know I have a team behind me. I have a
Mm,
friend who, when she received her doctorate and she was writing her dissertation, I was like, I think what you're doing is harder because I was writing my first book at the time. I think it's harder because, yes, you have someone that you can talk to, um, but I've got a whole publisher company to be like looking at things, reading them over, getting feedback along the way, looking at just outlines. I reworked the whole book at one point, and you know, having that person or those people that are there, they really support you during the process. So I also think it's almost harder. No, not almost. It is harder to be vulnerable when it's there isn't a team behind you.
mm. I can see that for sure. And it's nice that you feel that supported with the team, with that team, right? That's very cool. Patty, this is so exciting. Thank you so much for sharing. As we start to wind down the conversation, what is one piece of advice or more um, that you might have for new educators coming into your field?
Allow yourself to play with new instructional practices. When I was a new educator, and I just was somebody who was constantly looking for a better way, constantly like, how can I do this better and that better and this better? And I'm lucky enough that I live right outside New York City. So I had a lot of opportunities to be able to learn from people who had things to teach me. It was so good. The difference is today, I find that there are a lot of like school initiatives um, and I like that because I like the unity in that and the collaboration in that. But in some cases, there isn't the space to play.
Yes, I
Voltaire,
see that. Yeah.
yeah, Voltaire said, "Don't let perfect be the enemy of good." Like, we want to get better at our teaching, but we can't perfect ourselves there. We have to play and practice and then pause and reflect on how did that go? What could I do differently? What might I do next time? Because there's a sense of perfectionism that I think is like imprinted onto educators. And therefore, we feel like everything needs to be perfect. And it just doesn't. It learning is messy, teaching is never linear. It's always like taking the data from whatever we've seen, planning something, knowing it's not going to go as planned.
Mhm.
Somebody that I got my master's with would say, I'm such a good teacher till the kids get involved.
I'm such a good teacher in my mind.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we adjust our teaching based on what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So allow yourself a little elbow room to just try out an experiment and play with instructional practices. And with that comes just a little bit of practical advice. We don't need a boatload of slides. We don't need a boatload of
Yes.
slides.
Right?
We
Right.
really can minimize the slides because I find a lot of teachers really put a lot of time into their slides, which I appreciate that kind of like intention and love. But just as I said, like we're really good teachers till the kids get involved. And then if
Yeah.
it's the slide deck that's moving us and not the kids in the direction of learning, it kind of stifles things.
Yeah, I like that. If I may also add too, and just what's come up from this conversation for me is to make those connections early on, so that you do have a mentor and you do have support. In K to 12, I think people are more in well, I'm not I could be wrong here, but you're more centralized together and meeting more colleagues. Like, for example, in higher ed, I can go to a class and then come right home and not see another teacher ever for an entire semester. So for us, it has to be intentional for us to go out of our way to seek those kind of connections and support and mentorship even. Well, thank you again so much for joining us, Patty, from New Jersey. Is it snowy where you are
It
today?
is. It is.
Was it a beautiful winter wonderland for Christmas?
It was. It's not
Oh, love it.
always because it's very fickle here, but
Yeah.
we've been getting like a little blanket of snow every night. So it wakes up just so pretty, but we can still drive places.
Yeah, it's been a complete winter wonderland in Kamloops, British Columbia, and I'm loving it. I think it's beautiful. I can do it.
Yeah.
I like to say I've got enough meat on my bones that I can thrive to -5.
Okay.
So anything less than that or colder than that, I'm like, yeah, but I'm good until then. Thanks again so much for joining us, Patty, and I look forward to checking out your not your granny's grammar.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Educator Experience. We hope you're walking away feeling connected, inspired, and just a little bit more supported on your journey. Ready to go a little bit deeper? Join the Educator Experiences community and check out our courses and workshops specifically designed to support new educators as they navigate the ups, downs, and everything in between. You'll find it all at educatorexperiences.com. If today's conversation resonated with you, share it with a fellow educator and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Together, we're building a vibrant community rooted in support and connection. See y'all next Monday.